Feel like that. So roll call is here. Rita.
Present.
Anna.
Present.
Steve Bird.
Present.
Patrick.
Present.
Thomas.
Here.
Liz.
Present.
John. He's on. He was here. Heather.
Present.
Roy. Present. Chris.
Here.
Oh, got everyone here today.
I'm here too.
Oh yeah, I missed you. Sorry, Steve. I did Steve Bird.
I am here. I am here.
That's why I did Steve Bird. I did Steve Bird, but then I just skipped over. Sorry about that.
That's good.
I'd like to move adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion. 1 second.
Is there any additions or changes to the agenda?
Oh, there are. Where do you want to go? Okay. I don't know if you remember that we had Alan Samuels was going to join us last meeting and could not be here, and he is here today. So he will speak for a few minutes after the Sustainability Task Force presentation.
So we want to add an item, make sustainability F1 and then do F2. Does that make sense?
That does. Okay.
And then I have another amendment, but I'm not sure if it's needed, so you can educate me on that. I was hoping that Bria and Ella, research interns, could give a report during the reports section. I don't know if that needs to be added officially.
I mean,
maybe part of the parks report.
Yeah, I guess it's part of parks report. That's fine.
Okay.
So F2 will be, we'll make this F1, and F2 will be yeah. Okay. Those divisions, who's second? You're fine with this?
Oh, yes.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So there's a couple of hiccups on the approval of minutes. I think we'll pass over those and take those up next meeting. So they got sent out, but not so like not everyone got them. So we'll add them trying to approve something that everyone will just bring those back next meeting. So apologize for that. Moving down to item E, public comment. So at this time, I'll open the floor to public comment. Usually do people in here first, then anyone online. So if you have any public comments, step up and state your name and where you live. Your public comment, that's fine.
Okay, Rob Pattinson has a raised hand.
Thank you, Rob Pattinson of Scio Township. Anna, I've got a question for you. The quotes for the construction reminded me that Marshall Park had a problem with the roofs on the pavilions last year. Did those ever get fixed?
Yes, I would recommend going to check them out. They were just fixed up by the contractor last week and they're looking very nice.
Did we have to pay extra for that? I remember that was an issue last year, whether their initial work was not good enough and it needed to be replaced at their cost, or did that cost us?
That did not cost us.
Well done. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? Anna? Oh.
No other hands are up.
Now we'll move on to item F1, Scio's Environmental Sustainability Task Force. Anna, did you want to do an introduction? Anna?
I might ask Norm, did you have any introduction to our sustainability presentation? No? Yeah, I guess I'll just say
So their show.
it's their show. We're very interested.
Okay.
I think Kyle is here and unmuted, so take it away.
Yep, sure. Is it all right if I share my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Oh yeah, I do. Cool, we'll do that. All right. Okay. So, all right, can you all see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, great. So thank you again, everyone for letting us speak. As I'm sure a lot of you know, the Environmental Sustainability and Climate Action Plan, which has been in the works for a while, is in its final draft, and we're hoping to get it approved soon by the Board of Trustees, which is why Zoe and I have been tasked with going around meeting with different groups and commissions and people in Scio to kind of spread the word a little more, remind everybody that we're here, what's been happening with this plan, and get everyone involved. So I will just get into it. Oh, my laptop might be lagging a little. All right. So just a quick breakdown of how we'll be presenting all this. As I mentioned, we'll do a little bit of background, very brief, what's happened the past 2+ years with the Environmental Sustainability Task Force, with the Climate Action Plan, with Zoe and I as master students in the community engagement portion of creating the plan, and basically everything that's led us to where we're at now. Then we'll get into SCAP itself, which again is the Climate Action Plan. I'll probably refer to it as that, as the action plan, just so we're all clear. Just some broad strokes, the different sections of the plan, general information on what's included. And then we'll move into how it actually applies to you as members of Parks, Preserves, and Pathways, some more specific sections that would be relevant to what you're all doing. And then finally, next steps, where we go from here after the plan is hopefully approved, and what you all can do as members of Parks, Preserves, and Pathways, and also as individual Scio residents. Okay. Okay, here we go. So yeah, like I mentioned, this has kind of been like a 2-year process, but last summer, the Board of Trustees passed the climate emergency resolution, which among other things, among declaring a climate emergency in Scio as a result of climate change, tasked the Environmental Sustainability Task Force with creating a list of goals and strategies that complied with Washtenaw County's plan to deal with sustainability and to deal with climate action for the county. And the task force, which was created about a little over a year before this climate emergency, decided to do this through creating the climate action plan. The goals and the strategies and everything included in this plan is intended to do exactly what the Board of Trustees asked in meeting the goals of the county, meeting Scio's own interest in sustainability and climate goals, and ensuring there's an outline of all of these goals together in one place for the township to reference. Here we go. So originally, just to give a brief history of the task force, it was made up of entirely volunteers, all Scio residents, and was broken down into these subgroups of natural ecosystems and food systems, energy and buildings, transportation and mobility, materials and waste, and climate resilience and emergency preparedness. And these original groups were tasked with coming up with their own goals pertaining to each of these topics that would create the basis of the climate action plan. And these groups would eventually change and create the topics that are included in the final action plan, but I'll get into that in a little bit. But basically these groups proposed a lot of different ideas, and that took us into what Zoe and I worked on as master's students and as our master's project working with the task force, which was engaging the Scio community, getting feedback about these goals that the various working groups came up with. And we did this by creating a public engagement survey, which we distributed to Scio residents last summer, as well as creating some questions for interviews, which we used to speak with a number of different people we deemed as township stakeholders, members of various commissions and boards, and basically took all this data we got from residents and from Scio stakeholders, analyzed the survey and interview data, and created survey and interview data report, which is available on the Scio website, which we also presented to the task force and had them use to revise their goals and create the final draft of the climate action plan, which we have now. So that's how we got here. And now into the details of the plan a little bit. So, as I mentioned, we created to meet the same, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. There's a little bit of background noise that's kind of interfering with your audio. Any chance you have a window open that you could shut?
No, but hold on. I have this problem with my headphones sometimes.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, no.
That's better.
Sorry.
We really want to know and hear what you have to say.
Yeah, sorry about that. My headphones aren't the best. So yeah. Basically, as I mentioned, plan was created to meet the township's sustainability goals, of which is reaching carbon neutrality by 2030 for township operations and community-wide by 2035. And to do this, the plan outlines a lot of different actions and objectives that'll stretch through the next 10 years, but really has a lot of focus on the near term, things that can be done now and are already beginning to be done. And again, it will be a living document that will change over time and cater to the needs of the township and its sustainability goals going forward. But the take-home message you're going to hear a couple times, probably the rest of this presentation, is that for the plan to actually have success, it can't just be a document with a bunch of goals. It requires engagement from everyone in the township, from residents to groups like yourself, the board of trustees, township leaders, everybody. And that's why we're here to talk about the plan. So as I mentioned, the topics changed from the original working groups in the final draft of the plan, but ultimately ended up being made up of energy, buildings and infrastructure, transportation and mobility, regenerative agriculture and local food systems, water resources, protection and health, green infrastructure and natural ecosystem health, materials waste and the circular economy, and resilience and emergency preparedness. And we included just brief quotes from each section. I'm not going to read them. We'll provide these slides to you if you want to look at them later on. But what we'll do in the next section, when I pass it on to Zoe, is break down the different topics or the different groups and the topics within these groups that we thought were relevant to you as members of Parks. And we determined these topics to be transportation and mobility, water resources, protection and health, and green infrastructure. So with that, I'll hand the floor over to Zoe.
Cool. So yeah, how does the plan apply to you guys? Next slide. There you go.
Lagging behind a little bit.
That's okay. Yeah, you get it. Yeah. So okay, the first section that we felt was the most relevant to PPP is green infrastructure and natural ecosystem health. These boxes surrounding the focus area include some of the main topics that are addressed in this section of the plan, such as stormwater management and green spaces. This quote that we have included here says, Scio Township zoning ordinance needs a sustainability lens update to employ current research in limiting impervious surfaces, tree canopy protection, invasive species, and landscape planning. This quote was pulled from the plan, but we also know of a couple of projects that Norm Mueller is acquainted with as well, such as trying out new satellite land cover mapping technology to determine if Scio's zoning ordinance is affecting environmental sustainability of the township. For example, whether the ordinance is reducing impervious surfaces and increasing tree canopy over time. And then the other project involves using landscape level spatial metrics to detect how the arrangement of cover types affects an area's environmental sustainability. And if you guys would like to know more about those, you can reach out to Norm directly, I'm sure. And next. So yeah, the next section we thought was most relevant is the water resources one. This focus area has 3 main sections covering groundwater, municipal water, and surface water, along with ways to improve the quality of each of those. For groundwater, I'm sure you are aware that the dioxane plume is a big issue. Two strategies that the plan covers to mitigate this issue is first, to continue providing method 522 testing of private wells within the designated plume area, and two, to support the Coalition for Action on Remediation of Dioxane. Next, the section on municipal water discusses both indoor and outdoor water efficiency. For indoor, the plan encourages the installation of low flow water fixtures, and for outdoor efficiency, the plan suggests developing an education program to encourage water conservation for residential, commercial, and institutional sectors. Finally, for surface water, the plan argues for continuing collaboration with the Huron River Watershed Council to improve the health of watersheds. This final focus area, transportation and mobility. This focus area defines a clear goal of decreasing vehicle miles traveled, which is defined as basically reducing the amount of cars on our streets, and in turn reducing emissions. The plan lays out some ways this can be achieved by increasing connectivity of existing paths and building more bike lanes and walkways. There are many other topics covered in this section, including electric vehicles, but we felt that these were the most relevant to PPP. So for next step, we first ask that you guys familiar yourselves with the areas of focus and the SCAP goals that are relevant to PPP. Doing this will give you guys a good idea of the task force's vision for a more sustainable community and how you could contribute to that vision. Next, advocating for the inclusion of the goals in PPP plans and initiatives, working with other township committees to develop priorities. And finally, to ask questions. We have here the task force is here to answer questions about the goals, suggest ways forward, and help coordinate and do research. But finally, we included this slide of just some things that you can do in your personal lives to act on the climate. We wanted to include this slide because we really believe that individuals who have the power to make changes in their lives should take advantage of that privilege. So we have written down some examples like installing solar at your home, learn to compost, plant native plants, consider an EV, reduce the use of single-use plastics, help family and friends get involved, and finally be a leader for fellow Scio residents. We really want to stress that last point because we know that the community looks towards Scio leadership to set an example as change makers. And that's it. Cool. Thank you all for listening. The rest of the time we wanted to leave open for questions or to potentially have a discussion amongst your group on potential projects that could fulfill some of the goals on the plan, or how current projects could address the goals as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, I'll open it up to the questions from the committee. Anyone have any questions in particular? I have a couple, but I'll let others go first.
The two persons you were just speaking to us, are you members of the Environmental Sustainability Task Force?
We were, sorry, I should have made that clear. We were two of the master students that worked on the community engagement portion of creating the plan last summer, and were rehired this summer to basically do this, come around and talk to everybody about the plan, answer some questions, all that. So, but we've worked closely with them for the past year and a half or 2 years or so.
No, you have a question, Anne?
I had a question for you. I guess I'll share one thought I had, which is when I think specifically about what PPP is up to, it'd be interesting to create some type of sustainability rubric to follow when it comes to like kiosks and pavilions and benches, as well as maybe like to help us prioritize projects in the pros plan and kind of place them in the sustainability mindset. I thought.
Couple questions I had, unless you had one.
No, go ahead.
So when do you plan to present this to the township board? Is it on the upcoming schedule, or what's that schedule? Or do you have that schedule?
So we have done a similar presentation with them a few weeks ago.
Okay.
But in terms of when it's going to be put up for approval, that's likely to be this month or next month. But from what I understand, they've been pretty busy with a few other things. So the task force is kind of waiting for the best time to do that. But I think it will be either their meeting, I think at the end of this month or in August.
Then as far as the PVP, as far as trails, yeah, I think interconnecting. I mean, that's one thing I work at Washington County Parks, working on the border. Now I was talking, one thing that has zero carbon footprint as far as transportation is walking and biking. So anything we can do to promote, connecting our communities together so people can actually walk and bike safely from Scio Township to Ann Arbor to, our businesses, to our employment centers. I think that's one thing that's like, okay, as a measurable, it's like we encourage a certain percentage of people actually to walk and bike or other ways safely to their employment or shopping or whatever, is one thing that definitely is, and that's one thing that P3 is really trying to figure out a way to make sure our paths are connected. Here again, you start out and piece by piece, and eventually those pieces all tie together. So that's encouraging. I guess the other component is the bus network. Did you guys touch on that? Because I think that's another component of how can we, because our bus network is connected into the ride goes to Ann Arbor, but they also have Dexter, Chelsea one, the Wave. So we are sort of connected both ways, sort of being in the center. Did you guys look at that part? I'm guessing you did, because I think that's another long-term goal of, if you can get more people using a bus system rather than everyone driving to Ann Arbor or driving to. So that's my question as far as the bus network and bus system.
And I would like to add to the bus system is making them run often enough, frequent enough that people will actually use them. Because if the schedule is too complicated, or they don't come often enough or at the right times, it can be hard to actually use the buses for what you need. So having them come frequently, building up that frequency so that it's more available and accessible somehow in your schedule. So those are things I'd like to see.
So I guess that's the question. Was that part of, did you guys look at that much depth or not really?
Yeah, public transit is a large section in the plan under the transportation and mobility section. For this presentation, we didn't look much into it, just we weren't sure like how relevant it was to parks and pathways. But yeah, there's a long section of public transit within the plan that you guys can look over yourselves.
Yeah, and you're definitely right. And I think from what I remember, it's definitely an issue of addressing connectivity and frequency and all that, but it's also just getting buy-in from people to actually take the bus. And obviously that goes hand in hand with it being convenient and regular timing. And I think that's where the plan walks a fine line of providing suggestions and encouragement for people to ride the bus, and why we're out, talking with different groups and residents and all that to encourage that, but with, little ability to necessarily enforce that. I think really the goal of the plan is to encourage that kind of behavior, and that's about as far as it can go from my understanding. And I'm sure going forward, the task force and the transportation group will look into federal and state funding that, could go into making the bus system better, but that's, a matter of that funding being available and that taking place over the next couple of years.
Thank you. I think this is a good first step. I mean, you got to start somewhere, and I think that's where, Scio is, where, taking little steps to, getting first do the research and figure out, and then eventually, the board needs to decide, how much a priority they want to make it as far as elected officials, and then go from there. So thank you. I don't know Anyone else have questions? No?
I'll just make a quick statement, just, for the AAATA, they're very open about, if you call them and ask where you want a bus stop, a shelter, what times are the peak times, they're very open to listening and accommodating passengers. So it's just something I would just throw out there. They've always worked with, when you call them up and ask them, can you do it on this time, at this route? We'll work you in. They're very open to those suggestions.
Good. All right, nothing else on that. I guess we'll move on to F2, Professor. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Use remotely too. Professor.
Oh, Alan's hand right over here.
Okay, sorry. So, yes, your turn. So step on up. I didn't know. Sorry.
I feel like I should plead not guilty.
Yeah.
I'd love to introduce Alan, who is an emeritus professor and dean of the U of M School of Art and Design, who reached out, I don't know, about 6 months ago maybe, to offer support and creativity towards play spaces in parks and preserves. Rita and I have shared notes from our meetings with all of you in past packets, but Rita and I have met with him a couple times at his studio to kind of brainstorm and discuss play spaces in the parks and preserves, and we are thinking about it as more than just one playground in one park, but rather like the arc and the story of all of our properties and creating a cohesive design and play experience. And so we thought we'd invite Alan here to share with us some of his ideas and what he envisions as this collaboration, what this collaboration could include. And then I thought we could also ask some questions. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Why don't we start with questions? No. I was told I have to be brief. That's fine with me. So thank you for the opportunity. What I was just trying to do with Ann and is just see if there's an opportunity to contribute. I live here. I'm one of us, number one. Secondly, I've been designing products for 57 years, it turns out. I'm 80 years old, and I just come to realize that the other day. I don't know how to behave anymore. But one of the things I do know how to do is how to design things that haven't been designed before. And our conversation was about parks and play spaces and spaces for public community coming together and how might one think about these things. So what I've done for all these years with clients is design products. And as was pointed out, I taught for 32 years young people to do this very kind of activity. And in 2008, I retired. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I don't have clients any longer and I don't want them. I'm taking on projects that are self-initiated that I find are really challenging and interesting, which may have some relevance to you. And that's hopefully the point. So I deal with aging, disasters, the disabled, and poverty. These are areas that companies never wanted to deal with. And I find it terribly interesting, and now I can do it because I don't need their permission. On the other hand, it's very difficult to get anything really done. But nevertheless, I'm learning a great deal about people who are always considered on the fringe, on the edge, or not considered at all. So I'll give you a couple of quick examples so this makes some sense without overdoing it, I hope. When I think about aging and those of us who are, which is everybody, some a little faster than others, I propose to companies that we design a cooktop unit that turns itself off every 5 minutes. Why would you do that? That's exactly what they said. Why would you do that? The reason is, if you look at the statistics, elders who have memory issues burn their houses down. Some of them die as a result of the fire. And so I proposed a cooktop that was terribly simple, turns itself off every 5 minutes. So either you pay attention and you cook a sandwich within 20 minutes, or if you're like, for us, it would drive us nuts. You have to keep turning this thing back on. But if you keep turning it on, you'll make a sandwich or whatever, and you'll be safe. If you forget, you will not burn your house down. Try to find a company that's gonna make that. It ain't gonna happen, regrettably. But that's the way I would think about it. So when I deal with poverty, for example, and I'm trying to be really brief about this. I dealt with social workers from the university who deal with parents who don't have resources. And if you look at the numbers, 1,000 kids die every year because when infants are brought home from the hospital, they're put in an adult bed, oftentimes the only bed in the house. They get suffocated, they get smothered, they get pushed between the bed and the mattress and the wall. So from a design point of view, it wasn't difficult to design a $2.50 cradle out of corrugated cardboard and literally pass these out to moms and dads who don't have $75 to buy a cradle. And from 0 to 4 months, you can keep a child safe next to mom's bed, breastfeeding, reaching, watching, all those things can take place. When you're done, you recycle it because it's corrugated cardboard. Try to get a company to make one of those. Try to get a box company to make one of those. I'm only going to tell you the punchline because it's aggravating. When I found a box company willing to make these for less than $2.50, the lawyers for them, and they're good people, they were doing their job. They said, wait a minute, babies in our boxes? No way. The liability is too great. And so the project ended because of liability issues. And even if we had a long disclosure on the side of the box that says mom's responsible for the baby, mom will not put the box in the car, and on and on and on, it still wouldn't fly. But from a design point of view, that's where I wanted to go. I could design a cradle for $1.50, actually, if you let me. I tried to talk to the people at the Kellogg Eye Center in their children's clinic, because I walked in there and I'm just gonna finish. I walked in there and I saw kids who can't see or could see very little playing with toys that were designed for kids who can see. And they didn't know what to do with them. They couldn't even find them. And when they found them, they didn't know what to do or where to go because it just didn't make sense. So to make a long story short, it's been 2 years now, I've been trying to talk to people at Kellogg into designing the whole waiting room to become a place where when children come with various degrees of visibility or vision, they would find exhibits and devices and spaces appropriate to their seeing level that would become not only accommodating to them, so they'd have something really to do while they were waiting to see the doctor, but also be safe. And as importantly, it could become part of the medical mission because the doctors could watch the children play and learn something about how they see, how they perceive, how they touch, how they feel. That's what designers do. And I'm not trying to boast. I hope this isn't boastful. I'm just trying to give examples of how from a design point of view, I would approach parks. And I'm getting there. I'll be there in half a minute. I had another one I wanted to tell you about. Oh, sleep trays. Yeah, I was thinking about refugees, both at our border in the south and also in the Ukraine. And I watched them the same way you do on the news, carrying their few belongings in a plastic bag. And it seemed to me that if I could design a simple corrugated cardboard, not unlike the crib, for a couple of dollars, which you can do, that becomes a carry case so they can carry whatever items they have, which are very few, as you can imagine, but also folds out to become a sleep tray. So you have a clean place to sleep. And then when you're not sleeping, you fold it up and you put your items in it and you go somewhere, you go where you have to go. Again, $2.50 for a sleep tray and a carry case. And so I'm telling you about these examples. Number one, it's kind of fun to tell people because I get lonely talking to myself about these things. And secondly, this is the way I approach the parks. And so when I approach the parks, I'm thinking, and the reason I invited Ann and my other new friend here to come to my studio, I was engaged in a project that I thought was really interesting because I didn't know what to do. And it dealt with non-sighted children, as I've already talked about, non-hearing children, autistic children, and all the other children. So what I was trying to do is design play spaces where I could bring them all together to play together and not have areas where the non-sighted go, the non-hearing go, and on, so on and so forth. I wanted them to play together. So the question is, could they, can they? Can you really design toys and devices and experiences that would invite children with these various challenges to actually play together and not just have to be in the same space? I've yet to solve that problem. I don't know how. I've learned already that autistic children, there's no two are alike. There are no two any children that are alike, but especially autistic kids, because I can engage one and the same engagement device will get another one so excited they can't cope. And so I'm having real struggles with how to deal with them. So the non-sighted, I have to have devices that vibrate, that move, that give them feedback physically. And the non-hearing, of course, they can see, but they want something that engages them at a level that's stimulating to them. Okay, so the point of this little story is that when I was thinking about the parks, I'd like to have parks that are inclusive, certainly, invite everybody. And so who is everybody? How do you think about everybody? Everybody's maybe too big an idea. But from a design point of view, if we deal with it in pieces and parts, maybe we can make a whole that really does attract people in ways that, if we have a number of options in the township, where if I have kids that are under 5, I'd go here today. But I could also go to this other park and bring my 5-year-old and still find something for them to do. If I have teenagers, they're not going to want to play with things that engage a 5-year-old. So how do I invite or engage teenagers during the day, at night, seasonally? I mean, all these issues you deal with are dealt with, I assume. And so what I'm trying to say, and I'm going to finish by saying, I'd like to volunteer to try to think about the park designs or designs of parks in ways that I've tried to bring to these projects that I've given you brief examples of. And if it works, we might do something really extraordinary. If it doesn't, we'll have an ordinary, wonderful park. So it's going to be a win-win. But what if we could design parks that would really set a new standard for what play means, what conversations mean, what walking means, what nature means, what history means, what does it mean to think about the first people here, without doing all the obvious silly kinds of things. So those are kinds of some of the ways I would approach this, and then design in ways that were unique with your insights, because I can't do this alone. I'm not even sure I can do this, period. But I'm volunteering because, again, I live here. I want to go to the park too. And I'm wondering what a park could be that would enable me at 80 to sit and converse quietly while kids are playing, making noise. I want to be able to get along with the little brats and not to get in their way while I don't want them to get in my way. So anyway, there are a lot of interesting issues about how we bring various people together at a given moment and have them coexist, and yet have an exciting time and a unique time, safe time. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I don't know what else to say, so I'm done. So thank you and goodbye.
Thank you. No, that's exciting stuff. I mean, actually, it's very interesting. Following sustainability task force, like, how can that thing that we're building be more sustainable? Another avenue that sounds like you looked into too. So I think how this all fits in Scio is exciting to me. It's like how can we make our parks better, safer, and more sustainable rather. So I will around the room. Any direct questions?
So if we want to do this, what happens next?
We're not
Because
sure.
I think, thank you for your presentation. It's really exciting what I hear you talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. My answer would be we would pick maybe one site and see how good we can be, together. And if that worked, we would do another and another. But at the same time, think holistically, because I don't do pieces. I try to think holistically and piecemeal simultaneously. So we're designing one park because You know, we can't do it all at once. So you got to pick something we can do and then learn from. But at the same time, keep in mind what we're learning would apply to the bigger system of parks. And I think we can do two things at once and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, I'll never come back. I mean, I just won't bother. But what if it did? You know, I mean, just what if it did? And we could design a park around a theme that was really, really interesting and use it as an example, not only for the community, but I'm thinking, and I'm gonna try again to sum this up. I'm already talking to manufacturers. Well, I'll give you just a specific example. There's a company, have you been, maybe all of you have been to the library on Maple Village, isn't that called Maple Village? Where the library, the Ann Arbor Library is, next to Barry's Bagels and so on. There's that light box where have you been there? You gotta go there. There's a light box. The kids turn all these little circular knobs. Each one is a light, a lamp. Right. And every time you turn it, it changes color. And so these kids stand there for hours. Well, I stood there for hours, turning the colors, making different patterns. It's endless. So I called them and I said, could I do this outside? I was already thinking about the parks. And they said just in an email the other day, yeah, we can do this. It would take a little bit of framing and enclosing and thinking about rain and obvious things. But yeah, we've already done some of them outside in signage for companies. So yeah, you could have some of this happening outside. So imagine a child is walking, and as they're walking, the signs are reacting to their motions. Or a child is dancing and it dances, the lights dance with them. We could do things like that. And this company is saying, we'd like to try things like that because that advances, well, frankly, we haven't thought about that. So it works both ways. So we could use them and they could use us to try some new things in a park, and everyone's going to benefit. They're going to have new products and be able to sell more of them. And we're going to have a unique experience for kids or adults that no one's done before that I'm aware of. And that's how designers work. That's how I work. And I think it'd be terribly exciting. And again, if it didn't work, you know, we'd say thank you and goodbye. But what if it did? I mean, I've lived my whole 57-year career is what if it did? Well, that's how things move along. So anyway, that's where I'm at. Again, I don't know what more to say. Pick a place, we'll start playing and see what happens.
I think, you know, each year we develop a budget, you know, and figure out what we want to do, you know, this year, next year. You know, I think maybe something we could ask Anna to start looking at, you know, figure it's like, okay, we want to look at trying to do something in 24, you know, and, you know, start the design process, you know, and figure out what location would make sense. And then so you can get something, you know, designed in 24, so happening in 25. It could be sooner, but these things take time. So I think that'd be, in my mind, one way to get, you know, start that process, continue the discussion, you know, you and Anna and others, you know, it's like, okay, what would make sense of our parks? So we have whatever how many parks today, you know, and some are more preserves, and some are more parks, and figure out what would make sense, where would be a good place to start. And, you know, I think that would be, then, you know, bring that back to our committee, say, hey, this is what, you know, we've talked with them, and this would make sense. And then, you know, start the design process and, you know, have it continue to move forward. Obviously, we need to get approval from the board because they're the ones that, you know, allocate the money to such a project. But is that my idea? Others?
I think it would also be fun to include the community and the input of what would they like. If maybe they have special needs children or they've seen something somewhere else that was just fabulous. But I think it would be fun, kind of fun. We have a lot of very talented people in our community too that might have some interesting ideas. But I think starting somewhere and getting this conversation going and setting this precedent in one park. And then I liked our conversation about the connectivity of there's this in this park and then in another park, something that sort of complements that whole concept that we started here. But also thinking about different age groups, making it so that going out to see the night sky in the parks, if it's, some of them are dark, a little darker, just making those things more available and accessible to people that of different age groups that would like to be able to do that. So I'm pretty excited about it. I think that it's something to get that conversation going, set some money aside, and really, you have to start somewhere.
You reminded me that I wanted to say too, and I forgot, that one of the challenges could be in our parks to bring people together who ordinarily wouldn't be together purposefully. You know, I mean, within reason, of course. I mean, you can get carried away and have people, anyway. Yeah, I mean, but I mean, I deliberately think about groups of people who don't usually get along. No, that's not right. It's not about getting along. It's about they just don't get together, like elders and children, whereas they really would benefit from being together. And the research is showing that the elders who are having engagement with children, they both sides benefit, especially the elders. It makes you feel good just to see little kids be little kids, and the little kids don't even know it, which is even better. You know, they just play. So anyway, I just bringing disparate people together would be an interesting challenge. Just one more thing to try to do. So I think it's more interesting just buying another swing set, with all due respect. But if the swing set made the lights work, so, all right, I think I've done enough. I thank you for your patience, and can I go?
Oh, yeah, I think just also to answer, Liz, to your question, I think our next step would likely be, when ready, Alan, like, we'll chat, and then we'll chat with you, and perhaps we'll set up a special meeting or just a smaller working group to keep pushing this forward. Does that sound appropriate? That'd
be great. And I mentioned also, I've already said I'm 80. I don't have time to play. I can't wait for 2 years. I want to do this now. So keep that in mind. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
And all the work you've done so far. Yes, moving on to item G, reports.
I'd love to invite Bria and Ella to share first.
Sure.
Hello again.
Hello.
So we'll just, I guess, kind of give an update of where we're at. Is kind of what we're thinking. I guess first of all, the summer so far has been a lot of fun. We're having a lot of fun with this whole project. We're moving along with our research. We're wrapping up our bird survey, and we're in the process of doing our invasive plant survey. And hello, Ella. Our invasive plant survey will be at West Scio. I know originally it was maybe going to be all the properties, but based on the amount of time we have, we've chosen to focus on West Scio, come up with a method that works, and then that method can be repeated at the other properties. So yeah, we're working on our plant survey. We're starting to put together a report, start to organize our bird data, analyze it, and compare it to the bird data from 2021. So that's kind of exciting. We'll get to see if there's anything that's changed. And then starting to think about management plans too, especially once we get our invasive species survey done. We'll be able to start to prioritize certain areas for management for those species, looking at different management methods. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at, kind of starting to put our report together, looking at results as we're finishing our surveys also. Ella, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't think so. Sorry for the Zoom. Yeah, it's been really fun. I'm excited to see what the kind of trends show, and then hopefully, like we were talking, like Bray was kind of saying, like create a model that is, or like a format that's like repeatable. So like hopefully in the future this survey can continue and like it can be done in part by community members. I think that'd be really, really cool. So yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of one of our focus points too, is creating something that can be done in the future, and hopefully with volunteers too. Something that's really kind of exciting and involving for the community, but also doesn't take too much time. So depending on how much time and money you have available, you could go really in depth if you wanted to, but coming up with something that's kind of, you don't really have to go too in depth, but you still have enough that you can get the data that you need. I guess another thing I'll add, we did do a one night bird survey, which is really exciting. It went better than we thought it would. So we went out there before sunset and stayed until I think about an hour after sunset. And we actually found a barred owl out there and an eastern screech owl. And the screech owl, we believe we heard it because of our use of playback. So we actually played a recording of the screech owl from an app. The Audubon Field Guide app is what I used. And we came up with a protocol that way you don't use playback and have it be a disturbance to the birds, because especially during breeding season, they're pretty sensitive to some of that. Because basically they're trying to defend their territory by singing, or with the owl, certain calls will be defending their territory. So we actually did use playback, and within 10 minutes, we heard a response from 2 eastern screech owls. So that was our way of confirming that they're out there. So that was really exciting. And we'll be doing a second night survey in a different section of West Scio tomorrow night, actually, if anyone's interested in joining. So yeah, I think that's pretty much what we have going on.
The last night survey we did that you all facilitated, I think we had 4 volunteers.
I think so, yeah.
So yeah, if you're interested in volunteering, reach out to me and we'd love to have you. It was really fun to sit in the woods at night and watch the fireflies and listen to owls. It's great.
And we were escorted out by coyotes.
Yeah.
It was even more exciting, right? Right, Ella?
Did you do this at West Scio, the night
What was that?
watch? You did that at West Scio?
Yes, we did that at West Scio. Our first survey was from the Dino Drive trailhead. Basically for that, we've been using points. We have points marked on a map. We have a printed out map and a schedule just to make it as straightforward as possible. But each group basically went to their point and sat there for an hour, hour and a half maybe, and just record all the birds that they're seeing and hearing. So that's how we're doing that. And so our next survey will be in the Scio Farms section of West Scio, the eastern side. And we'll have 3 or 4 points and do that the same way that we did the first one.
How are the mosquitoes?
They're getting worse because of the rain. Yeah, we've been pretty lucky. Like we've been out there and I haven't needed a mosquito net or even bug spray. I don't know, maybe I'm used to them, but I was out there today and they're getting bad. So especially in West Scio because it's so wet. But yeah, so they're getting worse.
If Bria says they're bad, then they're bad because I have needed a mosquito net. So yeah.
All right, well, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for coming in, sharing your information.
So thanks, Bria. Thanks, Ella. Summer staff are over halfway through the summer. And as they mentioned, they'll be giving a report on all of their findings. And we were looking at the calendar. I think we landed on the fact that we will have a special meeting. Do you all remember what date we landed on spacing?
The 16th, August 16th. It's a Wednesday, I believe.
August 16th. It's a Wednesday. We'll advertise it with flyers. I'll send out emails. We'll advertise it at the BOT meeting the night before. And I think it'll be an incredible presentation. Yeah.
Is that here?
Yeah, it'll be in this room.
Okay.
And we'll have
4 o'clock for you.
4 o'clock, and we'll have it posted on the website as well.
So is that something LPC could join in as well, which I think would be really helpful?
Yeah, we are trying to invite anyone who's interested. It'll be open to the public.
What's the agenda for that meeting?
It'll just be Ella and Bria sharing their research findings. Yeah, they'll have a PowerPoint, share research findings. They'll have a written report, and also there'll be room for questions.
Do you have a time? Is it going to be
4 p.m.
4 p.m.?
I guess I should say that I didn't check the schedule for this room yet on that date. So there's maybe a slight chance I'll have to move it, but I believe it'll be in this room at that time. And then I'll just briefly share for Walker and Sam, since they're not here. They've been really focused in on creating paths south of Scio Farms in West Scio Preserve. And these pathways are currently only accessible to Scio Farms residents, as we don't have a trailhead on State Boulevard Park. And we think that's incredible because there's 900 residences there. That's more than enough people to enjoy some trails. And the trails are built, and we've had a volunteer day out there kind of grubbing the trails, making sure that they're safe and accessible. And they look beautiful. I think it's roughly a mile of trail, more or less. And we have a couple more Scio Farm specific volunteer days. We'll be building birdhouses next week, a kid-friendly event at Scio Farms, and we'll have one more field day out there. If you're interested in that work, feel free to reach out to me, and I'd love to share maps. And
is there a map of that, Anna? Or GIS for the,
We currently, Sam and Walker are currently working on building maps for all of the preserves, and they have a map for that preserve. It's not public yet, but if you're interested, I could send you the draft of the trail, just if you're curious, and they'll be posted on the website soon.
Yeah, I would like to have that too.
Yeah, great. Thanks, that's the parks report.
No other reports?
Do you want me to, I could say a brief thing about land preservation?
Sure.
Land preservation, it's been kind of quiet. We are continuing to evaluate properties that we may be able to purchase conservation easements on, or working with property owners who are interested in selling their property, subject to a conservation easement. And the Wren's farm that's on Wagner Road, that is the township's first I Protect Sell project, was purchased by Mike Vestergaard. He is, you may have noticed, putting up fencing. He'll be moving cattle onto the property pretty soon. He found an area where farmers used to just dump stuff in the back field. So he found, among other things, a car buried on the farm, just underground, I think, right, John? And he, anyway, he's gotten all that stuff out of there, and he's really working hard on it. So that's exciting. As you drive down Wagner Road, you'll see that. And the proposed fire station location is right next to that. So that's my report.
Anybody else have any updates or reports want to give us? If not, we'll go into project updates. Anna, you have anything on updates as far as projects listed there?
Yes, briefly. As I mentioned, check out Marshall Park. It is, I'd say, to spec now, which is fantastic. We have picnic tables coming in soon. We had a date and everything to get picnic tables put in with Greenview Services, and that fell through. So I'm looking for new people to work with to get some picnic tables installed. If you have any recommendations, shoot me an email. And as I mentioned, we have signage, wayfinding signage going up at Marshall Park. So always looking for feedback in terms of the wayfinding signage that will be going up. We'll be putting up laminated signs, and then once they work, we'll be getting real signage made. And then another update I'll give is just about
on Marshall. I did see the bench, so we got recycling and the trash cans, the DNR thing. We can sort of check those boxes. And
yes, that grant, we got our deadline extended again to close out that DNR grant because of, we just needed more time to get paperwork together. But yes, I installed a bench, and we have trash cans and recycling bins.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you for noticing the bench.
Yeah, I did.
It's along the zebra pathway at Marshall and Zebe. And I'll just give a short little update for the Upland Sidewalk Connector project. And that is that we went out to bid, and we're doing some internal work there. And I'll probably have a great update the next time we meet in terms of that project. I think that's all the project updates I have, because I think the next items will kind of shed light further.
Any questions for Anna on the project updates?
Bye, thanks for coming.
So I guess it moves us to item I, which is resolution bid approval for the Van Curler project. You want to give us a little bit of background on what the bid was for, Anna?
Yeah.
I'll be happy to go through the resolution.
Yes, I'll also share that I put in the back of the packet slightly better quality versions of those graphics. You will probably need a magnifying glass read them, but they're clearer. Okay, Van Curler, on the northern part of the Van Curler property, we are looking to put in a 6-car parking lot, gravel parking lot, very similar to what we have at West Scio and at Marshall. And so I'll share that we're still working with the Road Commission on line of sight at these locations to make sure that the parking lots will be safely accessible. So we're not quite ready to move forward yet, but we did go out to bid. And we did this at both Van Curler and D.D. Marshall, which stands for Douglas David Marshall. And that is very similar, 6-car-ish parking lot, gravel parking lot, still waiting for line of sight from Road Commission. And yeah, that's what you see in this packet, those 2 projects, creating those parking lots, as well as a little bit of pathway, a kiosk, just kind of what you would see at Marshall and West Side. Yeah, John?
So a question, as LPC looks at property and the BOT acquires property, and maybe if you're not on camera, I don't want to disrespect anyone who can't see me or hear me. So question about coordination between the properties that the LPC recommends and the BOT buys. If we know that we're going to want to put pathways or parking on the future, is that a consideration we could think about? Because otherwise we're just buying property. It's like, here, you deal with it, spend your money, try to work something out with the Road Commission. We'll get in there somehow. So buying property is one thing, having it accessible to the public without taking a big chunk out of your budget. And you know, how do we get people there? Where can they park? How can they use it? So are there any tips or anything you can share with Liz Weissman on whose shoulders this falls as an LPC member? Just kidding, Liz, it's all of us on that, but.
Yeah, isn't it, I mean, it's this group, right? That does the planning, right?
I think,
turn it over to you all.
Yeah, I think it is important to note that some properties could look like a great park.
Anybody can buy it, it takes somebody else to use it.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, I obviously I dealt with this a little bit at the Road Commission. So yeah, it's easy to sell like a parcel, but then people buy parcels and sometimes the township buys parcels, then you find out, wow, we really might not have access or very limited access, or you got to get access from your neighbor's parcel. And that might be why they're trying to sell it to us or sell it to other people. So I think what you can do ahead of time, and we always encourage township, because sometimes they'll take a big parcel, divide it up into 10-acre parcels or 5-acre parcels. And some of them, when they divided it, really don't have site access to, you know. So we encourage if they're going to do that.
It's landlocked, but it's not interior.
You have access, right? You have frontage on a road, but you don't have sight lines on a road. So when we'd always encourage people before they do that, make sure there's sight lines on those roads. So I think before we go, it would be worth hiring engineering firms to go out there. It's like, okay, this has 50 feet, 200 feet, whatever foot of frontage. Is there somewhere that we could put, because there also sometimes might be wetlands, all kinds of challenges, or like, oh, where you can put a driveway is all wetland or something you really can't put a driveway through. So it's like, yeah, doing that extra little engineering ahead of time.
Or at least, are there some things that, because we look at the properties, the parcels ahead of time.
Right.
And so are there some things to like keep in mind, like envision like 100 yards down the road, how we're going to, like, what are the factors that the Road Commission?
You're going to measure 10 to 15 foot off the edge of that gravel road, and you need to look nearly 500 feet this way, 500 or 600 feet this way, and do you have sight lines?
You mean no hills, no curves?
Right.
And if there's a hill or a curve, that means you might not be able to put a driveway in?
Yeah, and it depends on the volume of the road. Is it, a low volume road is going to be a little bit different, but you're trying to do it on, a busy road, like
the liberty of whatever.
Exactly, but it has high speed, higher volumes.
Yeah.
You might have to cut down some really big old oak trees in order to allow people to drive into a property, which feels not super in line with
Township goals.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. You buy in a preserve, then you realize that we got to cut down all these large oak trees in front of our preserve to get access to this preserve. So yeah, so just, it's like, oh yeah, this is a great property. Look at all these beautiful large oak trees.
So something's going to be a factor when we talk about these.
Start thinking about, have someone at least go out there,
Well, that doesn't, yeah, okay, but that's an LPC question. It seems to me that doesn't.
No, I meant LPC. I meant LPC. LPC recommends the BOT, but I meant like,
Yeah. it would
Well,
always-
real estate gets purchased with contingencies often.
Right.
Could contingency be put in contingent upon an engineering
Study.
opinion?
Right.
Yeah.
We
Right.
always do that
Right.
with our
Access.
environmental study.
Right.
So our,
Right.
yeah.
And some of the parcels might be connected to another parcel, so we really don't need access for this one. So that, but if this is one that's like, we're gonna buy this and we're never gonna have access, it's like, I mean, obviously the value is gonna go down substantially. We might just preserve it, that's one thing. But we have to preserve it and have access, yeah, we need to make sure it has the ability to have access.
because it's gonna add several $1,000s, or like the engineering and the tree removal, and then we're gonna have to plant trees, or, right? I mean,
Yeah, the first thing is just an engineering study, right, to make sure you create site. Then yeah, how many trees and what, that's gonna be additional costs. Yes.
And along with the sightline, like Steve mentioned, speed limit on that area. Like, can you get in and out with that sightline?
right, if it's a 55-mile-an-hour rural road.
Right, which is, all gravel roads are technically 55. That's what the state law is. Yes, they're unposted, based on the condition.
Tubbs Road is 55?
In theory, yes.
That's a terrible theory.
No, based on the condition. I mean, obviously some roads, Tubbs, I would not, encourage anyone to drive 55 on Tubbs Road.
The rule on dirt roads is go as fast as you dare.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Based on the condition, yeah.
I live on a dirt road and I can be driving 25, and because of the state of our road most of the time, people that are out walking are like, slow down, I'm going 25 miles per hour.
It's
And they
sometimes
just,
25 is
there's nowhere to
frightful.
go.
I understand.
So that's your factor for your question.
About the accessibility, certainly very important, but as you just said, if we want to buy something to preserve it, just to preserve it, and then there's the, put those two things together along with the, kind of like we build part of a pathway, part of a pathway, part of a pathway, and then sooner or later they all connect.
Yes.
There might even be, you know, as the value goes down for limited access, it still might be worth buying that piece just to have.
We know it eventually might connect to something else, or already does connect to something else.
That's our goal.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you must have a rubric in place that you use to.
Yeah,
Yep.
generally, yeah.
Yeah, but we've talked about, it has come up, I mean, in the recreation, the open space program, they talked about parcels, and public comment was about parcels that we buy that people want to have access to, people be able to use. So to the extent that they can do more than just drive by them and wave as they go by at some trees, and to be able to get out and use them in the pathway, I'm going to be more cognizant, be more aware of how do residents get to use it? How can we develop? Is it suitable for? It might be. Oh, look at that's great. We could park here in the front or in the prairie, and then we can walk through the woods along the creek and this. But well, maybe not Riser because there's a hill and a curve there.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, at Washington County, obviously we buy and preserve lands, and one of the things before we do that, we go out and take a look at what road's it on. I mean, I remember there's a site on Webster Church Road in Webster Township. It's like, oh, it's a good site, but okay, we're gonna have to modify Webster Church Road, which was gonna, cost quite a bit of money, and we end up not purchasing that parcel. It's because they're like, we want to spend a fair amount of money to modify Webster Church, and didn't really want to do that.
Thanks. Lots of good takeaway for me. Thanks.
Something to think about. Okay, so back to Van Curler. Did everyone look at the drawings? So I think, we've been talking about this. So this is like, Van Curler is a big parcel. This is the north end, having a parking lot off of Joy. So like the first step, we've owned Van Curler for I think 8 or more years. So finally providing access to people. We're looking to also provide access to the south coming from the Metro Park. So that's still in the process. So basically, we took bids. We got 2 bids, one from contractor Fonson, the other from a contractor Freer Forestry. So Freer Forestry was the low bid. The low bid was $107,070. And they bid the other one, DD Marshall, and if we award both of them, they'll give us, reduce their amount to 98,436. We had budgeted $120,000. This is all on page, I don't know, second or third page of the packet. So that's pretty much the background. I think it makes sense to, you know, move forward with this. In the process, I'm not sure we've actually done this as a committee. We would make a recommendation to the township board. Then it's a township board decision. You know, do they pass a resolution? Do they award it to that contractor? And they can elect to award it to a different contractor. They can elect to not do anything. But we just make a recommendation to the township board. So that's what this resolution is. Recommendation to the South Township P3 Committee. Recommend that the South Township Board of Trustees hereby approves the contract for Bankroll Reserve parking lot and driveway improvements to Freer Forestry based on a low bid amount of 98,436. So that's the resolution.
Right. I just want to point out that there's a misspelling in the both Van Curler and the Marshall proposed motions. It indicates it's funded by the Scio Township Parks and Trails Millage Fund instead of Trails.
Oh,
so that's something that, unless they've changed the name. Yeah, so we would want to make sure that that was properly corrected before presenting to the board.
Right.
That's me, sorry.
I have a couple of questions just from a perspective of, I'm not familiar with the way these things are bid, and I guess I have some questions that get a little bit into the weeds, but I don't want to take too much time. So I'm just wondering if other people like me aren't quite certain, for example, who even came up with the proper way to ask for a bid? Was it Washtenaw Engineering that we said to them, create, clearly they made these specs for the project, but how did that even get proposed to Washtenaw Engineering? Did we say we want X, Y, and Z, tell us how to do that?
Well, we hired Washtenaw Engineering to develop a set of plans and specifications and items to bid on. You know, first, also, in the same time, they're also preparing these plans to get approvals from the local agencies, the road commission.
Right, but the way they came up with the plans and the specs was to have input from us to say, this is what we want. And then they came up with the specs and the plans, right?
Right.
Who said, this is what we want?
I can speak to that a little bit. When I came on a year ago, I was kind of handed this from Parks volunteers. And so there's already a conversation of where the parking lots were going to be and what they would kind of look like. I've stepped in a bit to offer some feedback, like maybe we do a smaller gravel so it's more accessible, or oh, maybe the picnic table goes here type of thing. But I think it's been rolling for a while and it's passed through some hands. So these graphics that we see have some of my feedback, also past Parks volunteers.
Okay. And I guess then, because one of the questions I think, Ann, I asked you even a year ago when we met out at one of the parks was who determined that 6 parking spaces was the right amount? How do you even, I mean, certainly space has to be part of that concern. You can only do so much, but then if our plan is, and I know we don't have a lot of detail yet because that's why we're doing this, but do we have a contingency for, well, okay, so we've developed this structure and this place space, and more people are coming. And now, of course, it's ideal to have people walk and bike, but some people just have to take a car. And now we only have so much space for parking when we have this structure and this space that we've created that could serve so many more people, but we can't get them there. How do we, yeah.
It's a great question. And I think it's exciting to even be having that conversation because even a year ago, the parking lots were never full. And now sometimes I do go to a parking lot and it's too full. There's more than 6 cars there. So it's a conversation to have, and I have no answer quite yet.
But then, so when the Washtenaw Engineering was requested to them to come up with these plans and the specs, obviously I know we have to start somewhere. This is not criticism, this is curiosity really, because I want to know how we get into this and how we do it, to have a plan that works. And it won't be cookie cutter for everything because every place is slightly different. I get it. But so would then after Freer, I assume we'll say, just for the sake of the conversation, okay, Freer, you've got the job. Is Washtenaw Engineering going to be kind of the project manager then to make sure everything is done the way it's supposed to be done?
Yes, that is how that relationship should work in this.
Yeah, I think that generally in their proposals, they've given us proposals to do the design and construction oversight.
Oh, Washtenaw has. Okay, all right. So that wasn't.
I mean, that was actually, you know, we had what we had the two groups, right? Parks and trails. I didn't remember what
Tap.
Yeah.
Come on, right?
Yeah, I know. It wasn't that long ago. Was it?
Yeah.
So this is more of a parks project. It's like, you know, it's had history. But one thing I know, a preserve, you know, obviously Washtenaw County parks, we have a lot of preserves. And generally the rule of thumb is 6 to 10 spots. You know, who came up with that number? I don't really know, but I mean, that's generally where you start out with, and then you sort of go from there. You know, sometimes you're limited to how much room we have, you know, and then, you know, and then you don't want to over engineer it, because then, you know, next thing you know, the road commission is asking for left turn pockets and not traffic signals, but you know, it just continues to grow.
Sure.
So you start out like, but generally that's a basic is 6 to 10 spots per preserve in like the preserve Scio, the one on South Church Road.
Oh, Liberty Pond.
No,
that's on
West
Liberty.
The South, the Washtenaw County one,
I think that is
South Preserve.
It is South Church.
South Church, South Preserve.
Yeah.
I mean, you go there and certain, I mean, we have sometimes I've counted 20 cars in that 6 or 8 car parking lot. So I mean, you know, we started out there and I, you know, and Allison from, it's like, we should figure out a way to expand that, but
yeah,
it's just one of those things. You start out thinking, oh, but you know, it's like, wow, people really like this. And I mean, it's a good thing to have. It's like, wow, people are overusing it. But I think you start here, you know, and then based on topography, could we expand it to another 4 spots this way or that way?
Yeah.
And sometimes when you're designing it, you say, okay, we'll design it for 6, and you could eventually extend it to make it
that's what I'm
10.
wondering. But there's
But
contingency
sometimes
potentially
like, some
for
of these
that.
are narrow lots.
Sure.
That's the other thing on this one. The joy of the location, the sight lines are not the best
Yeah.
because joy is like that. So
yeah. If this November, for example, we were to start considering say a Stabler and Park, a parking lot, would that come before this group and we would consider these questions of how many spaces and configuration?
right, I think what probably Anna would start out with like, okay, this is where our base is, and then present that, say, okay, and we're looking to get engineering proposals from these firms. We're thinking, you know, a site similar to this one that has 6 spots, or like we're thinking, oh, this might be at 10 to 20 just because location and we think a lot of people are going to want to go there. And there's room to put in 20 spaces too. That's the other thing is sometimes it's sort of like how, you know, we'd like to have 20, but I don't know how we're going to fit 20.
I think I recall seeing plans for Liberty Pond where they showed the proposed parking area, and then there was an expansion area that they were considering too. It would double the amount if the need was there.
Well, we made that one big enough. We got some feedback from the schools that used that pond for their field study. And so I was really involved with that, but we knew that we needed to get buses in and out of there. They had to have room. Sometimes you might need 2 buses, or you might have parents that are there to chaperone the trip. And so you need enough room for several vehicles to be able to turn around and get in and out of there. So that's how that was kind of designed.
That's a great example of a parking lot that I imagine could be, easily expanded. There's just a big grassy open area next to it. Marshall's an example of one that is wetland right off the parking lot. Very different.
Good questions.
Couple more, if we have time. Just out of curiosity, do we have a timeline for whenever it's going to start and end? And if it goes beyond that time, I realize there are things that could happen like underground utilities that nobody knows yet how to plan for if things have to move, but is the contractor going to be held to a time date expectation?
I think there's completion dates on both of these. You know what they are, and sometime later this fall.
I don't need to know the date. I'm just curious if that's in the language of the contract.
You give them a completion date.
Oh, okay.
Generally, you don't give them a start date, but just a completion date when they need to get
And sometimes on roads, you can give a bonus for early or you deduct money for running late.
Yeah.
Does any of that kind of language ever exist in these kinds of things? Not that I want it, I'm just curious.
Usually, liquidated damages is only if it's some, if you don't get it done, you're gonna harm something, you know? So it's like, it really isn't, I mean, there may be a general thing. Maybe it's 2 years later and they still haven't started. But if it's a week late.
Well, as Rob asked earlier about the roofs and did we pay for the fixing and so on, I mean, though that kind of thing, especially in projects like this, I'm sure it can nickel and dime, but it can add up. Like we're saving close to 22,000 from what we expected in our bid request to what the money actually came in if we do both the discount and so on. But it could go the other way, with unexpected cost overruns or things like that. So I'm curious about the protection and the language of having an agreement with these guys for things like that.
And so that's where Washington Engineering be, so the eyes and ears out there, and they're gonna be animal, obviously, be spot checking, it's like, okay. And before we pay the final amounts, we go out there and do a walkthrough and create a punch list. It's like, okay, 90% done, these 10% things, and you don't pay the final amounts until they get everything done.
So then in this 22,000, let's say everything goes clean, we've got the 22,000 we didn't spend just goes right back into the fund, or does it have?
It just stays in the budget. I guess it just stays in our parks budget.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
A lot of times you bid these out as unit prices. So let's say we bid it out at so many square yards or so many tons. So if they bring out, we thought we needed 80 tons, they bring out 85, we pay 85, or if we only need 65, we'll pay 65. A lot of times they're based on those units. So based on what you need, it's like, oh, we need a little bit more. They already have a price to do that.
Okay.
We don't have those specifications. So that's why, in looking at this, I agree with what Steve said. I start at the biggest level. What are we doing? What's going to happen with Van Curler Preserve? What's the plan there? Who's going to use this? I realized I just jumped in, to this recently, and a lot of people have worked on it previously. So what is the plan for Van Curler? Who's going to be using this? It's at the edge. It's at the border of Scio Township. It's probably good for Webster Township people. They're nice people. And then also looking at if we're approving a bid, I looked at it as I know a little bit about 21 A limestone and sand base and all that kind of stuff, and then putting in the fabric, because I do this stuff myself at my home. I don't have the quantities, how many yards of limestone, how many tons, how much sand. The big item here on this Scio bid is the parking lot excavation and construction. I guess the other things are materials mostly, but we don't have the detail to be able to say that's a reasonable price. I assume someone did that previously.
Yeah, I guess would that be something that Washington Engineering in their specs would suggest to the bidder? You're gonna want 85 tons of 21 AA, or does Freer say, you know what, we've looked at this and it's going to require that amount, and Washington says, okay, yes or no? Yeah, I don't know.
Generally, yes. I didn't look at these in detail, but that's generally how they're set up.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And these sort of, we're a little bit behind. Just some of this work was supposed to be done, I think, a while ago. So we're finally getting these bids. So generally, I think in the future, my goal would be, get this out to our committee. You guys be familiar with it, and then we, it's like, okay, next month, let's say this is the month of January, February, March, we're going to be bidding these projects on X and Y, so people are aware, rather than it's like, oh, we're bringing this to you, and a lot of us haven't even familiar, because obviously one we're a new committee, but this way you can anticipate. It's like, oh, sure, next year in May we should be looking at bids for Township Hall Park or whatever, Liberty Park. But yeah, we're sort of trying to catch up.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And
this was a clunky year.
The idea that only 2 people bid, you've mentioned this before, with all the money that's out there and all the contractors that are so busy, they just don't even bother bidding. But that it came in under what I guess was Washington Engineering's estimate, or is that our estimate of how much? A
combination of theirs and ours.
So I guess that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So
I happen to take a couple hours and go to Van Curler because it's near my house. So I was able to walk there. And I walked to this place where this parking lot will be built. And I think Van Curler has some promise. It's a beautiful piece of property. And there's especially, I like when you get going about halfway in, you crest a hill. And the topography there is the Huron River Valley, so it's similar to where I live. And you crest a hill and you start going down gradually towards the river. And I envision a really nice path there through there someday. As I said previously, it would be really nice for people in Webster Township to bike or walk and eventually get to the Huron River and the B2B trail, which I consider the ultimate destination. Because I very much like that park. But we haven't had the time. I haven't had the opportunity to discuss a vision for this park. And so my question is, what was the prior committee? Did they have a vision for this park? And did they think about what is this little parking lot, this access going to do? Where's it going to leave? How are people going to walk from there to Huron River or some other place?
I'll speak to that a little bit. When I came on board, Van Curler was sort of one of the crown jewels. But the accessibility is a real issue. And Joy Road, the speed limit is fast. And we finally I think we have figured it out where we can actually put a parking lot. I don't know if that was purchasing a little land. I don't remember how that easement, but the other side, closer to Huron River Drive, is a lot more challenging. And
it's tough to put a driveway in there because there's a bank. It starts, Huron River Drive is low, and then you walk up a bank to get into the woods there.
And the visibility, just with the way it's tucked in, having people, coming in and out of there.
Right. Yeah, I think on the south end, the Huron River Drive side, we're working with the Metro Parks, and we have a walking path from Dexter Huron. So you park at Dexter Huron Metro Park and then walk over. So we've hired them. That was actually a year or so ago. So they're working on plan. So we have a walking path.
Oh, someone's working on that professionally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a drawing we've submitted to the Metro Parks. They've had some comments and it's in the process. So hopefully that'd be a project next year. And actually we'd get a walking path from Dexter Huron to Van Curler so people at least walk. And I think ideally there'd be eventually a master plan for Van Curler. I don't think that's ever been done.
Sam and Walker, the stewards, hopefully will be able to put in some time at the end of the summer to map out a potential path system.
Okay.
But nothing's been done yet in that capacity.
All right.
So it's in progress. The good news is, like I said, we've owned this for 8 years, and it's one of our gems. For the most part, a lot of people haven't had access because access has been so limited. So
it is a beautiful piece of property, though.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been on a few times.
Yeah. I think one of the challenges would be getting the walkway from getting across Huron River Drive from the parking area to the entranceway on the south.
There's actually better. Being out there where the driveway used to, I guess it's still there. There was a driveway up here in River Drive. There's a gate there now. The sight lines
Van Curler.
Yeah, into Van Curler. Right. That's where we're looking at probably putting the walking path. A crosswalk there with signs. The good news is Huron River Drive's 35 miles an hour versus Joy probably 45.
It's not like trying to cross I-94. It's not
right.
I have to walk on Huron River to get my mail and so on. So it's not awful.
Sorry, I do have one more question, just about signage and kiosks. We were out talking about this in one of our special trips to the park, but literally the design, the placement, the height, how far down, if someone has a special need for mobility issue, whatever, and they can't, see up high. Do we have a plan for what kind of services our kiosk can offer, if that's the right way to ask that question?
Yeah, that's a great question. Currently, none of our kiosks are designed in a way that I think has any different abilities in mind, or has just, different abilities in mind. But I think that's a great point. And I know again, Sam and Walker, the stewards in the Parks Department, are currently working on kiosk design and creating a design that will be able to implement at every kiosk. So I'll mention that.
I see kiosk is in the list of items for the bid. And so I thought, well, okay, maybe somebody's come up with already what that's got to look like. And if not, we should certainly.
I imagine it would be the same, if not trying to mimic all the kiosks we already have. But in terms of design and what's on it, they won't be doing any of that as part of this bid. They'll just be putting it up.
Okay, maybe then that's more or less, sorry, I guess what I was really trying to get at is the literal physical placement of it, so that if someone has a challenge to see up high, you know, is it literally placed down a little bit lower? Is that already a plan or part of the plan? That kind of thing.
Got it. No, but I think it should be.
Okay.
Do we know the design for the kiosk? Is it like a bulletin board with a roof over it? Or?
Yeah, the kiosks that you see currently out at West Scio, Marshall, I think there's actually one back here in the parking lot on the ground if you want to look at it. It would just be mimicking that. It's, little board with a roof.
Two posts and
I think the one that's at West Scio, that's off of Dino Road, I think it is pretty accessible for someone, for example, who's in a wheelchair and has a low perspective and can't stand up high. That's my recollection.
I think so too, but I'll re-examine them with that lens.
And there is a map that's lower. The map is.
I remember bending over to see some of the things. I'm not very tall, but.
We need a motion to.
Yeah, so we need someone to move.
Are we doing these separately?
Yeah, they're separate, yep.
Okay, well, I will move that the board, we recommend to the board that they accept the Freer Forestry proposal for the Van Curler. And I know you wrote it down really nicely in here.
Is there a second or support?
Second that.
And spelling corrected.
Yes.
Well, I think the motion doesn't have that language.
Yeah, the motion. It's just to write up. Any further discussion?
Just a quick question. Is the township used Freer construction before? I mean, what type of reputation do they have? They completed projects on time? They've used them before?
They did the Liberty Pond parking lot. Actually, he did. His name's Eric. The Liberty Pond parking lot, West Scio parking lot, and also I'm under the impression that he helped out with the Marshall situation. When things started going downhill, he kind of helped us out with that project. So I haven't worked with him personally, but Parks has.
Yeah. So we had good experience, local contractor, and we had good experience. So we had some questions. So.
Do we have to make a motion also then, since there's a combined project discount? Do we have to make a motion that both of them are approved?
Well, there is a second. There is a second.
Okay. I didn't know if the technicality had to be that they were.
Steve's probably right. That we should do both together for the discounted price.
We can do them individually and they can, I guess,
Yeah.
Whatever the technicalities are so that we get the discount.
I'd say we approve this one.
Okay.
We voted second. Let's vote on this one.
All right.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's scary. So let's move. We'll move into D.D. Marshall. Want to give a little bit of background. The good news is actually some of us actually went out to there right when we did the review. Some of you want to give a little bit of background on this one?
Yeah, pretty much the exact same story.
Ditto.
Yeah, similar situation where work has been done to figure out the one spot that will probably work line of sight wise, but we're still waiting on road commission. Same thing with Van Curler. So ideally, should we get approval from road commission, this is the spot where the parking lot will be. And it'll again be a 6-car parking lot, gravel, kiosk. And then a little path leading down into the woods. Yeah, that's what I got. Rita?
I know this has been kind of sitting here for a while, and I'm wondering, is there some kind of tie up with the road commission? I mean, is there something that's preventing it from moving forward with the road commission?
It seemed like perhaps an email was missed, is the story I got from Washtenaw Engineering. And so I think that's where the hangup was, and hopefully as of yesterday, we're pushing forward again. Yeah.
Anna, the BD Marshall Preserve, that is on Marshall Road, right? It's just west of the current Marshall Park, right?
Correct, yeah, across from, what is it, Lauren Drive?
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to point out in the scope of work that Fryer presented, they're including ingress and egress driveway onto Joy Road. So that's obviously an error that needs to be corrected.
Thank you. Maybe that was a copy and paste error from the previous.
Good catch.
It's under the scope of work under the.
What page number is that?
Yeah.
Patrick, what page number is that?
15.
17.
It's this one here.
I got it. Yeah, I'll point that out. Great. So this is one that unfortunately would require a lot of trees to be removed. You can see they've all been marked with fluorescent paint, 21 trees in the road right of way. I think I can confidently say that like no one in this room feels super comfortable with cutting down that many trees, but that is the one spot where line of sight has been, is potentially possible. Yeah, just
so that's the only solution that you all came up with, considering that you don't want to take down trees.
That was before my time with the Parks Committee. I came on once that spot had already been selected. I don't know, Rita or.
Do that really did have to do with
right, because Marshall's, doing this, and I think that was a spot that, Washtenaw Engineering said, this is one spot that we think we can get the sight lines.
It's kind of a bottleneck at the road, and then it expands.
Right, just, yeah. The other bad thing on this one, the budget was originally 60,000, so we are over budget on this project. The low bid was 108. The good news is some of the other projects in the parks budget have not moved forward, so there'll have to be a budget adjustment to move some of that money to do this. So it's a downside, but things have increased in cost. I guess it's similar. I mean, it's about $100,000 for one of these. Obviously, it requires more tree work. So that's why.
I think there might be a small amount of grading that has to happen.
Yeah, there's right. That line.
And I just also noticed that Fryer, recommended that exploratory assessment be conducted regarding underground utilities so that we can anticipate the cost if it's necessary to do that. I mean, that's what's part of their proposal here.
So underground utilities, would that mean like if we wanted to put a light in the parking lot or something, or
yeah,
or facilities?
But they're just recommending that we make a study of that prior to. I mean, obviously that would impact the budget.
Right, yeah, you're going to require to have misdig called out to make sure that utilities are deep enough so when you're building the driveway, you're not taking that here from gas or I know it's very electric out there, but those type of buried utilities.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean that's just their recommendation that we do an exploratory assessment prior to construction. So
right.
Do we know what utilities run along the north side of Marshall Road? Someone does, I don't know.
Yeah, the utility companies do, yes.
We don't know.
Well, Washtenaw Engineering may have got that information.
I would think so.
Yeah.
It's gonna be, like you said, gas and telephone, the electric is up high and there's no water out there, so that's about it.
And in theory, all utilities are supposed to be, 30 to 36 inches below grade. When you put in a driveway, you shouldn't get into that, but there's some that are only 6 inches there.
And there's changes that go on in the land.
And put it in that parking lot, there might be areas that.
But they'll be outside the right of way. Utilities are going to be in the right of way. The parking lot would be on our property, so that should be a problem. Just getting the driveway in, and creating the driveway for potential conflict. So.
Is it 21 trees plus 19 trees?
Yeah.
And there's no way to avoid that. I mean, I assume you've looked at that, but that is really a lot.
It's a lot. When I ask, I've been out there with Washtenaw Engineering, and I don't have much experience in this realm, so I have to kind of defer to the experts. And my understanding is that this is the one spot where safe entry would occur, and it would be unsafe to keep the trees. Someone could turn out of the parking lot and not see a car that was right there with trees in the way. I don't know, Roy worked with the Road Commission much more than I have, and if anyone in this room has.
Yeah, I mean, because you're probably going down, like I said, 300 to 400 to 500 feet of sight line. So that's probably why you get. When we were out there, there's quite a few trees just right in the vicinity of the driveway. I mean, even just put the driveway in, I don't remember the number, but a fair amount. But then you get the sight lines. That's where the impact gets quite a bit higher.
Do we have better copies of these engineering plans?
Yes, I put them at the very back of the pamphlet, and that's the highest quality we have.
Oh, I see. So there was something that was passed out today, is that it? I printed out my own.
Yeah, I did too. It didn't really work out. You can see a little bit.
When we were out there, I think I mentioned when I was down in Greenville, South Carolina, along their Swamp Rabbit Trail, they purposely take a lot of dead trees and drive them into the ground so that they can be homes for birds and bats and whatnot, other wildlife. And as I noticed the, well, I guess, firewood value that we would get money back on that, I would almost wonder, would it be more useful to our overall perspective and our goals if we don't want to cut trees down, but we have to do this? Instead of making firewood out of it, what about driving them into the ground and creating places for wildlife to live, even though the trees are effectively, of course, not trees anymore, but they could act like it for wildlife. I mean, really, they'd be put in other places, but at least there'd be a viable use for the tree that's been cut, something to think about, I guess. But I tried getting and it's this in Greenville, South Carolina. It's called the Swamp Rabbit Trail, but they didn't have any information about it. I just heard from someone walking on the path that that's what they do, and I tried figuring out where could I find information about it, and I got stymied on that. I couldn't.
Because it would be interesting, like how deep do you dig a hole to bury?
Somebody's got that figured out too, but I don't know. Of course. How deep do you drive a pillar that's say 15 feet high? How much of that has to go underground? I mean, Washtenaw Engineering can figure that out, I'm sure. But that's a thought. Other than getting money back for firewood, let's use it for nature.
Repurpose, right?
Yeah.
I know y'all have been working on this for a while, but is everyone comfortable with that? 40 trees coming out for public access? Are there alternatives? Or I mean, here I'm jumping in, y'all are almost at the end point, but that seems like a huge loss of habitat.
I think that's what John was pointing at. When we buy these parcels, we should be doing that study ahead of time, because we invested how much?
I know, but we want to buy the parcel anyway for that same reason, because of the habitat in the open space, So.
Liz, to add on to that, these trees are also in the right of way in front of someone else's, then a neighbor's property. So there's another element there where we would be like taking all of these trees out from front of a neighbor's property. It is a really good question. And I don't feel like to me, it doesn't feel like we're at the very end and it's too late to ask that question. And I think it is a valid question.
I mean, are they invasive trees? Are they scrub trees? These are
big, giant.
landmark.
I don't know how giant
Yeah,
they
I
are.
don't know. I can't-
Yeah.
But they're the roadside trees, you know, you see.
I think that's the only option though, if you're gonna have access to it with parking.
But I mean, if we want to
Safety's
put
control.
access to this preserve this, yeah, and I mean, that has
Unless
been
it
looked at,
connects
trying to
somewhere.
move it east or west. I think this is the point of where you can get the sightline and minimize the tree impact. Yeah, there are a substantial amount of trees. Some of them may be in the parking lot grading too, they may not be all along the road. But,
It looks like 21 trees in the road right of way,
okay,
And I
19
don't think
additional.
that all of them are allowed. Was there one or two?
Two dead trees. Yeah, the 19 trees to be taken down inside the parking lot are mostly small and a couple cottonwoods. And then a lot of the larger trees along the edge, I think, are white oak.
The thing is, if we tried to do the parking lot without taking out all those trees, it's possible that it could be done. It would just be a little more complicated and, you know, the parking spots would just be complicated to do it.
I think it would end up being a parking lot without a driveway. Because road commission has to approve the driveway.
Well, I
right?
know, if the road commission says no, we've got to work something out. But I just find that a massive.
Yeah. So are
loss.
the trees on the neighbor's property, is that going to be an issue with the neighbor or?
Yeah.
It's technically in the right of way. So it's like between the road and their property.
Okay.
They're not gonna like it.
Oh, I see. So some of the tree removal is in front of the neighbor's property, but on the right of way, that's it.
Yeah.
The tree removal to create the sight lines.
So you don't need neighbor's permission.
Right, is that
right.
correct?
I mean, it's technically, they're in the road right away, so that technically the road commission's trees. Because the tree falls, let's take care of it, road commission. Property owner does.
Have the neighbors in this process been given notice of this proposed development? I don't know if they're entitled to.
They haven't yet, have they? They haven't. I mean, there's nothing they can do about it, right? They're in the right of way, but.
Have they been marked? They've been flagged?
Yeah, they're spray painted swatches.
Does this apply to both sides, both neighbors?
I think it's just,
To the west.
yeah, if you're standing in the driveway facing the road on the right.
Their driveway's at the very west edge of our parcel. And the way the
Yeah.
road bends around the other way, I think. Yeah. Parcel down to the east is less impacted.
I know all of the neighbors at Liberty Pond were informed when the plans were being considered to make that into a preserve. I would assume the same would be true for this area around DD Marshall too.
I did send out a letter to all neighbors, maybe like 10 months ago.
Okay.
But since we haven't had approval from road commission, we don't even know if it's possible quite yet to do the parking lot and have, so nothing's gone out since then. That was just a heads up. Yeah.
Where you were just talking about another place, parking at a place, making a pathway to then have access to a spot. Do we have any possibility of any other land that we can make this parking lot and create a walkway to save some trees? Is that a possibility anywhere?
I don't know the answer, but that would be the alternative. I don't know what connects.
Yeah,
I'm not familiar
right.
enough.
No,
with
it's completely.
Anything, is there any other parcels that connect to this parcel that we own?
Sloan Kingsley parcel. There's been some conversation. The
it.
parcel
That's
is
not, yeah,
I don't know what the newest news is with that, but that's the
I
only
don't think
connection.
that's gone anywhere, maybe not for a long time.
So you would go northeast through this Sloan Kingsley towards Baker Road, and then Sloan's on the other side of that.
Or, I don't know, I mean, Because then if certainly the neighbor wouldn't want to lose a lot of trees, and maybe we could say, hey, have you got room in the back of your lot that we could put a parking lot so we don't have to cut these trees down? And they might be amenable to that. Now that could be very complicated. I don't know, deeds and all that kind of stuff, but if we can save that amount of trees, maybe it's worth looking at.
The other thing, we do have a tree fund, so we could plant replacement trees.
Yeah, but you know how that goes. We'll be all dead before those are, you know, half as big as the ones now.
But I'm just saying.
Well, right. But I think that's the question though. What price do we want to pay for access to this preserve? I mean, that's what we're here for. So we need to look at all those possibilities.
Right. And I think John said, before we buy something, what is the impact? What's it going to cost them? You know, because like land, we get land pretty cheap. They realize it's going to cost us $120,000 to get access, and we're going to cut down X number of trees.
Right.
This is one we really want to buy.
Right.
Or is there another way?
The cost of access too high, not just in the cost of the contract.
Yeah, I have no idea how much we paid for this parcel. We could pay more for access than we did for the parcel.
Yeah.
The neighbor idea is creative. I'm pretty sure that neighbor is nature and nurture seed.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's, yeah.
Who specializes in fruit tree growing? That's study. But I guess the bigger trees are along the road. You know, for me, the bid seems like a good company and a reasonable bid. And I guess the parking lot is the smaller trees. That's what I understood too. But the ones along the road, you know, that's the only access, and we decide we want to do that. It sounds like that's the way to do it, but if there were another way, I would pick the other way.
So this is a relatively short distance from Zeed and the pathway there. I mean, is there an alternative of a bicycle park, you know, where you wouldn't have necessarily car access to it so much as bicycler?
Yeah, I guess, do we have to have a parking lot? I mean, or something smaller, bikes instead, and that's just that's how we do this one.
Of course, DOT might have the same issues with those trees with bike access too.
Well, yeah, okay, right.
Yeah. Plus the reduction in costs is contingent upon both of these properties being developed by. And from what I recall, the only place that you could put an access from the parking lot was where they indicated, which is going to require some trees to go. But again, if you can't really get to the property, nobody's going to be able to enjoy it. And it seems like a fair trade-off to me, but you know, I'm certainly not prone to, you know, recommending cutting down trees when not necessary.
I think when we went in and tried to envision where the parking lot could be, by measuring how far is the right of way of the road. So how deep we have to go in and where to put it, the slope, the wetland. I mean, there's so many different things to consider. There was a period of trying to figure out like how could you do this and keep some of these trees. And I don't know, it does seem like a really high number.
I think something important too to note is, you know, initially when I joined the group, we had continuous discussion about sort of trying to represent the public the best we can. And I think, not that I speak for, you know, the community, but like just from a PR standpoint, cutting down 40 trees next to a fruit tree farm seems like a bad move. As far as gaining like support from, you know, the community, I feel like that's going to be pretty frowned upon. Just that's my opinion.
It's a lot of trees.
Could table this. We could both not accept it. I mean,
I almost feel like we need to see the property again to make this decision now.
Well, and
with the road commission walking alongside us or something, because they're the ones that are going to say yes or no, right?
on this again, if we know the neighbors well enough to talk to them, see what alternatives we might have. And if it turns out that it has to be even smaller than 6, or it's only big enough for bikes or something like that, I don't know, to consider all those options.
So you're saying we may know the neighbor to the west?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, because the other thing, shared driveway. You'd have to grant an easement towards us. But the question is, a lot of those driveways on Marshall might not have sight lines either. So if let's say he granted an easement, we may have to take out 20, 30 trees to get his drive up to stand. I really don't know what his driveway looks. I mean, there's open spaces on that road, but I'm not sure, go to the west, does it open up? Because that'd be the other way, when you're looking at buying land, up and see, sometimes it would make sense to get an easement from the neighbor for shared access and use their driveway, or if the easement, is over here to the north, south, east, west, away from our preserve, then we can come in this way type thing. So you're not impacting all the trees on the frontage. Obviously, each parcel is going to be unique and different. But that's one way. It's like, okay, driveway, but the parking lot's here, but the driveway's here. Would be one way. I'm not sure how receptive a residential person is going to be of a shared public driveway.
Yeah,
into there,
especially with an unknown future amount of use and tear and all that, right? So yeah,
The residences are to the east. They're pretty far away, and they're not gonna.
but I mean, to the west, that's where I think.
To the west is the farm.
Right.
You've got some.
They live
lanes.
there, yeah.
Is it pretty much tree cover? I mean, trees along, does it open up?
There's trees along, to the west on that farm, there's trees along the road, and then it's open. I thought it was, the land goes, I don't have a topographic. I thought it went down towards the west, and it was kind of, this farmland was a bit lower.
Was it Washington Engineering that initially surveyed the property and recommended that spot for the parking lot?
Yeah, I think it was, yeah. Working with the road commission requirements and standards,
Yeah.
that's what it is.
So maybe it would be prudent to, revisit that area with them and have them explain their rationale for their choice. Because if that's the only option, cutting trees down for a parking lot, then.
Well, I think the rationale is the sight line. That's the only spot.
I think, you've probably already figured it out. It is the only option, right? As far as we know, it's the only option if we want access to that property.
Exactly.
Commercial, right?
So I guess then it becomes a vote, right?
It's a balancing.
Do you approve? Does someone make a motion to proceed with this, and then we take a vote, or do we not have the support to move ahead?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody can just call the question, the vote, yeah. I mean, the hard part is we're all sort of coming into this 11th hour because I wasn't that familiar with this park until we went out there, how many months ago. So we a lot of us didn't. It's like, oh yeah, I remember we hired someone to design it. And, we bought the land. It was all sort of new to us, and all of a sudden, this comes before. It's like, okay, we need to pass a motion on doing this or not doing this.
But Roy, is the 11th hour because we're running out of time in the calendar for the year to get the project started, or what? Because we could table it and do some more research, get some more information. And you know what? If we have to just do Van Curler, okay, we don't get the discount, but we move on Van Curler and we don't make necessarily a rushed decision on DD. And okay, so we didn't save the discount, but we're possibly saved ourselves a lot of money of, whatever could unfold at DD that could end up being very negative, So
tabling is probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Or what if we did it with a contingency that we review the amount of trees and my memory isn't that dependable, but it just seemed like that we had a big discussion. We were out there about what trees we could keep. It seems like there was a distraction that day, so sorry.
Well, we weren't sure if the pink meant it was staying or leaving, I think is what our question was.
Yeah,
but
it just seemed like when we were trying to anticipate where the parking could be, it felt like there were some trees that what if we could keep these? So I just wonder if we can kind of review that with.
I think we could try to, and my understanding is all of the trees that are marked just need to come down for a line of sight if we're gonna move forward. I don't think, Roy, you can, and anyone can correct me, but it seems like with road commission, there's not much room for discussion. If it has to come down, it has to come down.
And really, there are a lot of trees right along the road. I know they're kind of crammed in there.
It is possible that Freer would keep that discount open. I don't know.
Do these bids expire?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, right. They must.
Yeah, usually it's 30, 60 days. But I guess, I mean, it seems like we have enough questions that we should, I guess I don't feel comfortable at this point moving forward, because it's like we have more questions than answers.
Yeah.
And sort of like, you know, it's like, oh, we got something, we got to build something, but we have more questions than we have all the answers. So sort of like, you know, so like we should get more answers and then bring this back. And yeah, end of the day, it's $8,000 or $9,000, you know, it's important, but and we may end up packaging them anyways, or this could get delayed to next year, DD Marshall, or we may never put a parking lot in there. I don't, you know, I can't really say, but it seems like voting on it now without questions, which are all legitimate questions, since we also came into it, you know, after it was up, it's not bid. So is there someone making a motion?
So we're set on Van Curler. We voted on that, right?
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
The trick part we did with it combined, but I don't know.
So
the board will have to sort that out at their meeting. Sorry.
So here's another thing. Is it something that it would be helpful to have another special meeting where we just go and see for ourselves, just to answer, to put this to bed for us? Would that be helpful?
I'm not sure that would, because as pedestrians, we could go there and say, gee, it would be nice if this or if that, but it's really Washington Engineering and the Road Commission that's going to say, yeah, I know that's what you want, but this is what you have to do. And I understand what you're saying. I think, you know,
I think we maybe have Anna work with Washington Engineering and the Road Commission to find out, clarify on these numbers, what things that are marked in orange or pink or whatever, these are the trees. Then we could have a special meeting or just try to get out there before the next meeting. It seems like, you know, maybe, and then take a look at it, and then we can decide next meeting, if this is definitely, you know, we still want to move forward with this, and maybe get some more history on this whole DD Marshall, you know, because, you know, sometimes you buy stuff and there's a commitment that you're going to open it up to the public. Is that a part of a condition? I don't really know. So in reality, we need to do that, or maybe we don't. I don't know. Probably no one in this room has all that history either. So there's a motion to table.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to table the resolution of the bid approval for DD Marshall.
There's support.
Well, there is, but I would wonder, do we need to also say in that motion that it's tabling it because we're going to be, again, talking to Washington Engineering, that there's a list of things that we want to do while tabling, so that when we come back, it isn't just, okay, now let's start over, or because do we get work done in the meantime?
You should just table any further investigation.
Okay, fine.
Bring it back.
Great then.
So you'll support it?
Yes, I am supporting it.
Should we vote on a table?
You could just postpone.
Postpone. The motion to postpone. Sorry.
Yes, I make a motion.
I'll support that.
Okay.
All right. So postpone DD Marshall bid. So thank you for the healthy discussion.
Then just let me ask one clarification. Does
No
that
more
mean
question.
that we are moving forward with Van Curler? We are doing that, right? We're not.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
So I guess, yeah,
Okay.
We can have that discussion with the Freer. Right now, we're definitely going forward on Van Curler. DD Marshall's up in the air. I guess if he's saying, okay, then his number for one is back to 107, 700 or whatever. I guess maybe when it goes to the township board, we'll just have to clarify, you know, they're being partnered, but since there's more question than DD Marshall, we're still recommending the police get Van Curler done this year.
We still have to too. We could ask how long will you leave open your discount you know.
Yeah, because he could actually give us a discount if he's Marshall.
Yeah.
Pay full price and Ventura gives a discount.
Okay, there you go.
Maybe that's the way to do it, just have.
Yeah.
That would
be good. Yeah.
That motion. All right.
Do we actually have to vote, like say aye?
All in favor of, postpone?
Yes.
Motion.
There you go. Aye.
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 Opposed? Aye, scary. Did that public comment?
Well, we're not talking about uplands, so.
I think we did a little bit. We took bids on that. Bids came in quite a bit higher. We have one bidder. And so now the township's, can try to work with that one bidder and see what options we have. There is that ARPA money available, so that could help lessen, even make the impact of parks zero. So a lot of it, it's sort of out of our hands. As you recall, the township board request bids get taken on that. It really was a TAP project, but then keeping part of the road project, and then the township sort of took ownership of it. So at this point, it's more the township project. They're all sort of township projects, but it's not really coming from one subcommittee. So the plan is for the township board to investigate the one contractor, see if there's any reductions or the ARPA money to make that project whole. The goal is we'd like to try to get it done. The prices are just a little bit high. We can also look at, could we extend the completion date, some things that help the contractor reduce his price. So that's where we are on that, but we weren't thinking we were going to make it. It really wasn't our project anymore.
Okay. What was the expectation for a bid when you say it's high?
Closer to 300.
Okay, so it's around 100 grand more than what the township was.
Right. That's becoming the norm. Yeah. We just did a project. That'd be 500, came in 700,000.
For residential, the same, but double it.
Yeah. So I guess we'll on to item L, public comment. Here's your public comment. So I'm glad Rob's still with us. So Rob.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So Zoe and Kyle brought up a very good point about the method 522 testing for dioxane. And what I'm wondering is, we have a lot of tributaries for Honey Creek. We've got open water, wetlands. Do we have any ongoing policy for periodic testing for dioxane, PFAS, arsenic in the parks and preserves? And might that be something we want to consider? That as one thing we learned last year with Scio Township doing the well testing with method 522, it was kind of the canary in the coal mine, where we saw the lower numbers where the plume is migrating north, and other testing systems wouldn't have caught that. And so do we want to apply that kind of method or that kind of philosophy to the parks and preserves and testing water, maybe testing soil? Also, it was perfect timing for the presentation from the university professor, in that Scio Township is a play desert in terms of in the area of Zeeb and Jackson Road. And the DDA and the Planning Commission both on Monday talked about the fact that when they widened Jackson Road, they had to buy several parcels along Jackson Road. And there are bits and pieces of those parcels left that the township owns. And perhaps one of those parcels, one they were talking about was at Stabler and Jackson, that sounded rather larger than the others, that maybe some of those parcels could be turned into playgrounds or parks. And that might, with the sidewalks there, that might add to the pedestrian attractiveness for Jackson Road. And then also, just sort of information for you guys related directly to pathways, the DDA meeting, Supervisor Hathaway talked about the fact that the DOT or MDOT has come back from the proposal to put the pedestrian crossing over over 94 at Zeeb Road, and they said you can't touch the bridge. Anything associated with the bridge, they can't put barriers on it. They can't put, you know, concrete posts. They can't put, they can't widen it until until that bridge needs to be maintained again. And that's 20, 30 years down the line. They talked about spending 2 million or 4 million on a pedestrian bridge. But the point here is that the $1.5 million we got from Donna Lazinski, 750,000 of that was earmarked for the crossing of 94 at Zeeb. And as Supervisor Hathaway said, those funds are now fungible and can be applied to getting the bridge over the Huron River, getting across the railroad tracks, and those sections of the phase, is it 5 and 6 of the Zeeb Road pathway. And then to follow up on Steve's suggestion about what to do with the wood that has to be cut down from these projects, when they were doing the pathway along Zeeb last year, we talked about what can we do with these trees? Can we take some of the larger trees, especially the oaks, and make lumber out of them to use on the pavilion projects and stuff like that. So to follow up on what Steve said about using them for habitat, can we use some of these trees, again, especially the oaks, and make lumber out of them that can be used in other projects? And that might be a way of saving some aspect of, rather than just chewing them up into cinders or into firewood, we could get some use out of them. And then Rita, your idea about the working session, absolutely perfect. For Anna to find out what the details are with Washtenaw Engineering, and then for you all to get together with a special working session, very good idea, so that the next time you meet, you can make some decisions. And then one thing we've got to do as Scio Township is be better neighbors. And just plain common courtesy would be for representatives of Scio Township to contact the neighbor who is potentially going to have a bunch of trees cut down in front of their yard. That's just the absolute least all of you could do, is to make sure that they at least know what's coming, know what's going on, maybe even involve them in the conversation. They might have some ideas for you, but just, it's terrible to have a neighbor move in next door and then cut down a bunch of trees and you got nothing to say about it. So thank you all. Thank you for the extra time.
Thank you. I see Kathleen Brandt's hand up.
Yes, this is Kathleen Brandt. I just want to thank Rob Pattinson for keeping this commission informed of some of those ancillary issues, benefits. I really compliment him for the efforts he does to keep you guys aware of some of that stuff. So thanks, Rob.
Anyone else have? Yeah. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make my motion to adjourn.
I'll support. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.